Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to go over, like many others, the class tuning incoming today when this video is released. Talk about some of the class changes, what they look like, who's getting hit with the Nerf bat, and who's getting buffed up. Alright, so without further ado, let's crack straight into it. So, looking at the Death Knight here right off the rip, all damage increased by 4%, not applied to PvP combat. Demon Hunter, Devour. Devour is going to be so nasty by the end of this expansion. All damage dealt increased by 3%. Focus ray damage bonus increased by 80 was 50. And Collapsing Star main target damage bonus increased to 75% was 50. So all around buff for the Devourer, right? And Guardian. I know a lot of us are happy about this. I know I am. My fellow PvPers can rejoice. PvEers, I don't have to tell you. Maul, Raise, and Ravage damage reduced by 20%. Heart of the Wild Cat form and Moonkin form damage reduced by 20%. And Moonkin and Red Moon damage reduced by 10%. Season 1 4-piece set bonus. Celestial Might causes your Maul, Raise, and Ravage to strike again at 50% effectiveness. Was 100. All across the board at nerfs for Guardian Druid. And I don't know how they're performing in PvE. I think they're doing fine. Doing tons of damage, but in PvP they've been a real problem, so I know a lot of us are happy to see this. Buffs across the board for Restoration, good, they need it. Rejuvenation and Germination and healing increased by 10%, Dracody healing increased by 10%, Wild Growth healing increased by 10%, and Embrace the Dream healing increased by 35%. Looking good. Devastation Evokers. Disintegrate damage reduced by 5% for Dev only. Scale Commander Might of the Black Dragonblight bonus to Black Spells reduced to 20% was 30. So a little bit of nerfs for Devastation Evoker. And Flame Shaper Twin Flame damage increased by 25%. So a little bit of a buff there for you guys if anyone's enjoyed the Flame Shaper. Prez, all damage increased by 5%. Time of Need healing increased by 50%. And Vert and Embrace healing increased by 50%. Trying to get them on par, get them up there with the Holy Paladin Mistweavers of the world. Hunter. Beast Mastery, all damage dealt by you and your pets increased by 5%, does not apply to PvP combat. Marksmanship, aspect of the Hydra's effectiveness reduced to 35, was 65, and aim shot damage is increased to 8%, but does not affect PvP. Thank God! Not know my leather classes that the rogues and the demon hunters world are like, oh my, thank the Lord. Paladin, Holy. Reflection of Radiance's proc rate has been significantly reduced for Holy Paladins. Hammer and Anvil healing increased by 35%, does not apply to PvP combat, and Rite of Sanctification primary stat gain increased to 5%, was only 2 for Holy Paladins, does not apply to PvP. Rite of Adoration healing increased to 150% for Holy Paladins, that does not apply to PvP combat. So kind of looking like some neither here nor there changes for Holy. He's getting some all-around buffs, it looks like, in PvE, but honestly, their damage in PvP is pretty nuts. So we'll see if they change anything like that in the future. Moving on to Priests. Discipline, all damage reduced by 12%. Does not apply to PvP combat. Apparently they're doing lots of damage. I have seen them in Battlegrounds do tons as well. Power Word Shield and Void Shield Absorption increased by 15%. Does not apply to PvP. Flash Shield and Shadowman Healing increased to 15%. Does not apply to PvP combat. I don't think this needs a buff in PvP at all. So that makes good sense. Rogues. Ooh. Assassination. We're going up in the world, right? All ability and melee damage increased by 4%. Outlaw. Woo! All ability and melee damage increased by 4%. And we just got that 12% last week. So we're it's getting there. 16%. I don't think we're going to be able to compete with Sub still. But hey, I buffed a buff, right? Sub, all abilities and melee damage increased by 3%. And PvEs are already nasty. I don't see why this was necessary. But thank the Lord it doesn't apply to PvE combat. I know sub rogues, even on my rogue, have been the bane of my existence. They're just so good right now. Shaman, look at you, elemental shamans. You bide your time and look what happens. You're rewarded. Lava burst damage increased by 20. Elemental blast damage increased by 15. Earth Shock damage increased by 15%. Lightning Bolt damage increased by 10%. Flame Shock damage increased by 10%. Voltaic Blaze increased by 10%. Look at you, Elemental Shaman. You're on the up. You guys are going to be a real problem, especially in Blitz. I can see it. Restoration. All healing increased by 3%. Resto Shaman needs the love. Warlocks. Demonology. All ability damage reduced by 4%. Okay. And then look at this. The big boy buffs. My other character, right? The Arms Warrior. The Mortal Strike damage increased by 12%. Execute damage increased by 15%. And Cleave damage reduced by 10%. But who's pressing Cleave in PvP anyway? But for PvE, the Cleave nerf, whatever. But I'm happy to see Mortal Strike and Execute get the love they deserve. Hopefully we're hitting big hits. That's what Arms is all about. And then moving on to the PvP changes, specifically. Druid, Restoration. Reactive resin healing increased by 50%. All healing increased by 5% in PvP. Feral, all damage increased by 9% in PvP. And I already feel like Feral's doing pretty good damage, so it's going to be pretty nasty. Frost, all damage increased by 8%, and you saw the buffs up top as well, so they're getting some pretty good buffs. So Frost, maybe the little one-shot thing may be coming back here. All damage increased by 8%. Demon Hour, Devour. Reverse Magic has been added as a PvP talent, and a note was saying this was previously planned as 12.05 changes, but removing it, just making it faster. Devastation. All damage increased by 4%. So you saw that nerf to Disintegrate. Now you're seeing a full-out buff by 4%. Arcane, all damage increased by 8%. Arcane missiles damage increased by 40%. I know a lot of Arcane mages have been complaining about the missiles just doing nothing, being complete filler. So hopefully that gives them the love they need. I'm not saying I love fighting Arcane, but every class deserves to be fun to play. Monk, Mistweaver, all healing reduced by 8%. Good. Now let's make them stop one-shotting people. Paladin, holy, mana regeneration reduced by 30%. Apparently they never go I've been seeing a lot of that. Elemental, all damage reduced by 4%, but just completely counteracted by the buffs that you saw up top. So those buffs are going to weigh in more than that 4% nerf, right? Enhancement, I don't know why they hate Enhancement Shaman, but Crash Lightning damage increased by 80% in PvP. Also, Fresh Crash Lightning Unleashed. So you're getting a little bit of Crash Lightning damage. But Primordial Storm damage has been reduced by 15%. So I guess they're trying to just go get rid of this one-shot gimmick that Enhance kind of always has. But that's really like their main damage right now. Surging Elements now increases hits by 10%, was 15. Surging Bolt damage has been reduced by 50% for Totemic. And Fixed Issue will cause a tool tip or Primordial Catalyst. Primal, oh my gosh, Catalyst to not display that Lava Lash cast at 50% effectiveness was 150. And then lastly but not least, some affliction changes. I know they need the love, especially in PvP. Corruption and Wither damage increased by 20%. Agony damage increased by 20%. Unstable Infliction now lasts 12 seconds, was 8, at a 50% increase in its total damage dealt. Wow. And then Shadow damage bolt increased by 100%, and Drain Toll damage increased by 100%. So it's looking like a lot of classes are going to be up and down. So Arms Warrior Love, Rogue Love, all that stuff all across the board. I think these are good changes. I think Blizzard's doing really well with the tuning. I'm hoping to see it continue on. PvP for me has been an absolute blast, and PvP has been just as fun. Or PvE, excuse me. So these are the changes, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you enjoyed this or want to see more of this content. Subscribe if you want to see a tons of it. But most importantly, tell someone you love them. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.